a geek. Talking baseball every week. 'Cause they're Gleeman and a geek.
And welcome to Gleeman and the Geek, presented by Black Stack Brewing, now in a liquor store near you, you lucky folks. I am John Bonus of Twins Daily. With me, Aaron Gleeman of the Athletic.
Hottest team in baseball, John.
Yeah, that's right.
Is it amazing how much 2 wins can mean?
You're definitely getting a different vibe from the fan base. I will tell you that for sure.
Hit the button that makes us. There you go, John.
There you go.
That's a little shout out to the YouTubers out there. People listening to audio are saying, "What is he talking about?" We're on YouTube now, folks. You should know that. See our beautiful faces bright and early on a Friday morning.
Yes.
It was funny.
Not so bright.
No, but
Cloudy,
early.
Looks like there's a storm coming through. It's not going to be great.
Yeah. It's called the Red Hot Minnesota Twins. That's the storm coming through. No, I'm not. I don't actually believe this. I'm not trying to. I'm just making jokes. It's a defense mechanism. I will say, and this is just based off, comments on my articles or Twitter or emails we get and stuff like that. But it is funny what winning 2 out of 3 on the road against the first place team in your division does for a fan base that was, pretty bottom of the barrel in terms of morale. And still right around bottom of the barrel, but it was like, well, maybe this is a lot more fun to win. They're really playing hard, and the bullpen seems the mix and match. And it's like, okay, well, let's see. I don't want to, rain on that parade, but I'd rather they win than lose. Honestly, we're going to talk later about the draft ramifications of losing rather than winning, but just in general, I would rather watch at least. I have no notion of them actually winning over the next 40 or 50 games, but I would rather they be competitive, in part because it's just less depressing to watch a competitive team, whether they're, below 500, whatever it is, just, competitive, not getting blown out. But also within that, if they are able to stay relatively competitive here over the next 7 weeks, whatever it is, 2 months, that probably means some good things for individual players too.
Sure.
And that's what we kind of wanted to focus on today is, the dust has settled a little bit after the crazy trade deadline, which we talked about on last week's show. They're just sort of business as usual now with a entire, half remade roster, a lot of anonymous guys, a lot of just mixing and matching, a lot of, this guy's back, or, this guy's playing here, or Michael Tonkin's trying to close out games, and who's Thomas Hatch. There's all sorts of stuff, and we can talk about some of that stuff, and we're going to talk a little bit about maybe the Tigers series, which they won 2 out of 3 in Detroit, like I said. But we also wanted to focus on a little bit bigger picture of, what are these next 2 months
short of competing for a division title.
Yeah, like what can be sort of found within this, other than, like I said, I would rather watch them be competitive. I would rather them, if they're going to lose games, at least put up a fight. Don't lose 13-2 very often. I think I expect quite a few blown leads by the remade bullpen and all that, but there's also a little bit of like a freeing element where it's like it doesn't. And maybe they had started to lose this before the trade deadline just because they had sunk to, what were they, 5 below 500 or whatever by that point. But those losses still hurt in that they were trying to win. They were clearly trying to win those games, and they just weren't good enough. Whereas now, they're not good enough, my guess. They've won 2 out of 3. I'm not trying to be too mean to them here. If they want to keep winning, that's great. But now they're just at a talent deficit that they weren't at before. And so some of the things that were especially frustrating about losses, a 2-5 week before versus a 2-5 week now, let's say, if we see one, is like before it was like this group just cannot get their act together. And now it's like, well, what do you expect out of this group? They've lost, 8 of their 12 best players or whatever it is. So there is a weird kind of freeing element. But one thing I also didn't want to do was act as if these games are in and of themselves meaningless. And, look, I'm assuming they're not going to keep winning a bunch of series. But like I said, if they want to do that, we'll change our tune by next week. But for now, just looking at the outlook, looking at the schedule, they have the Royals coming to town now, and then they go to play the Yankees. I'm not expecting a ton of wins, but that doesn't mean that the games themselves, whether individually or week to week or month to month, are meaningless because, look, these are Major League Baseball games. Whatever the anonymous nature of the bullpen and half the roster is, they're going to be wearing Minnesota Twins uniforms. They're going to be playing high-level competition. And one thing we've talked about over the years, because believe me, guys, this might be the first rebuild or fire sale or tear down or whatever that this team, this configuration of the roster has gone through. It ain't our first rodeo. We've been writing about the Twins, both of us, since 2002. And
right.
go look at some of the records they've had in long stretches, especially early 2010s during that time. But even since we started podcasting, which was in August of 2011, they were right at the beginning of what turned out to be about a 5 or 6 year, let's call it a rebuild to be charitable. But one of the things we talked about then, and we can talk about now, is the playing time itself has value. And I don't mean that in terms of wins and losses, although, again, that'd be great. But what I mean is, you've traded away your 5 best relievers.
Right.
There's an opportunity, even if the bullpen is bad overall, there's an opportunity to give experience and reps and just flat out playing time to guys that wouldn't normally get that opportunity. And if you can find even 1 or 2 relievers down the stretch, or you can even get, Cole Sands or Justin Topa or one of the existing relievers, let's say, back on track. And we're going to talk about this specifically a little later in the show. That in and of itself has value for 2026. And for instance, if you're playing somebody new in left field, if that guy hits well, Alan Roden, let's say, he can kind of emerge as part of you can start to at least put the pieces in place for some of a 2026 roster. Or, we're going to talk more about the infield. The departure of Correa, whether you're a fan who thinks that it's a good thing, a bad thing, somewhere in between, Brooks Lee's going to be playing shortstop. These next 7 weeks are going to tell you more about Brooks Lee as a major league shortstop, good or bad, than you knew before, and that you would have been able to know or learn if Carlos Correa was around. And there's a dozen of those examples at least, up and down the roster, different areas, some small, some big. And I feel like we're going to talk some about that today, because that is the only real, and you got to make something of it too.
Right. And the playing time thing that you mentioned being, or the at bats or the investment of that, is something that I don't, if you're a player, a former player, somebody who's played baseball or softball or whatever, and you heard that, you're like, well, of course, but I'm not sure everybody recognizes exactly. Like, if you're a player, those at bats mean something like that. That you understand that is the team investing in you, showing some confidence in you, and trying to learn some more about you, giving you some opportunities to demonstrate yourself and to learn and to grow. Right. And a lot of what this episode is going to be about is, what are we looking to see people learn and grow? You're right in that these games aren't meaningless, but on the other hand, we actually asked Rocco about this a little bit just before the deadline. There is a level of urgency involved that was there before that is not there now. Right. That is the natural. He said it as, there's maybe not quite as much urgency around as if you have a 650 winning percentage than if you have a 500 winning percentage and you're battling for a wild card spot, right? Well, the same thing works this way. Like when you got a 350 winning percentage, which they don't, but you understand what I'm saying, versus battling for a wild card spot. They're 6.5 games back of the last wild card spot right now. Like, even after taking 2 out of 3 from Detroit, that did not launch them up the standings, right? And that I'm not saying that it's impossible that they end up getting hot and putting themselves back into this wild card race.
I'll say that. I can be the bad cop, you can be the good cop. Okay. Do you know what would you like to guess what their playoff odds are right now on baseballreference.com?
Baseball Reference. So Baseball Reference has been the least optimistic for them.
I can look up Fangraphs too if you
Baseball Reference, I would say, is 3%.
0.8%.
Okay, all right.
Would you like to guess Fangraphs?
So I'm 4 times more optimistic than Baseball Reference.
That sounds about right. Just in general, which makes you about 40 times more optimistic than me. Would you like to guess Fangraphs, which has generally been like you pointed out just then, a more favorable or optimistic view of the
Well, it has been more optimistic in part because it saw a lot more talent on this roster than it currently
Right.
has. Right?
Take a wild guess at the
I will
fan
go
graph.
another 3% on that one.
1.8%, and that's
All
going to
right.
be the high side here. So
Yeah.
that's where we're getting at, and I agree with all that you said, and I think part of it, and we'll maybe get into this deeper in the show because we're going to kind of go topic by topic, different areas that the 2 months themselves and the playing time and the experience and the exposure to major league competition can add value. It can also, by the way, show you that a guy is not in your plans. We're probably going to focus more on hey, this guy can kind of make a role for himself next year by playing really well over the next 2 months. Well, the opposite is true too. Some of these bullpen guys, goodbye Noah Davis, we saw already. Like, some of these guys are going to get thrown into the fire, and this might be their best and maybe last opportunity, at least with the Minnesota Twins, to show something. And if you don't show something, they'll maybe bring in somebody else. So, but I also hope, because right now this roster, in part because they eliminated or they removed 10 guys from the roster within a 40-hour span, whatever it was. And so they were, to some extent, scrambling to fill those spots. Right. They had an off day, and then they had to play the next day. And particularly in the bullpen, when you lose 5/8 of your bullpen, you're not going to have 5 new top prospects to call up. But also within that, the guys they brought in, the AA or AAA, or even some guys who have major league experience that they brought in at the trade deadline,
AA, AAA, or DFA.
Right. But they sent a lot of these guys to the minors after the trade. And in doing that, what they committed to for at least the short term, and what we've seen so far in the week plus since the deadline, is just kind of seat fillers in a lot of spots. And my hope is not that some of those guys, I mean, there are, especially in the bullpen, let's say, if a guy, you can be a seat filler and you can play your way into something bigger. And their bullpen is in such a state of disarray for 2026 that, I mean, there are 8 spots to fill. Like,
right.
6, 7, 8 in that next year's bullpen can just be anyone who looks okay down the stretch here. So there are opportunities, even if you're a quote unquote seat filler. But what I would like to see, and I'm hoping they focus more on as we get deeper into this month, or especially September, when you can add a couple more guys to the roster, let's see some of the prospects. Let's see some of the guys who aren't just trying to take advantage of playing time and win a role for the beginning of 2026, but let's see some of the guys who might be part of the team for the next 5 years. Let's see some of the guys other than Alan Rodin, who they added to the roster right away after getting him from the Blue Jays in the Louis Varland deal. Let's see Taj Bradley. Let's see Mick Abel. Let's see James Outman. Let's see some of your own prospects who have played most of the season at AAA. And my hope is, once they get a little more settled in here, and we're just a week out from the deadline, and like I said, they had to fill like 8, 9, 10 spots immediately. They filled a lot of those spots with placeholder, seat filler. My hope is, as we get a little deeper here, we'll start to see some higher upside guys, and then that playing time can really start to have value, because then you can just be in full-on evaluation mode. You can kind of get to learn more about these guys, get to know these guys, because a lot of them, it's going to be the literal first view people have of them. Yeah. And so I think that is not only valuable, but it's interesting too. Before we do that, though,
let's talk about our presenting sponsor.
Let's talk about our presenting sponsor, Black Stag Brewing, which if you're watching YouTube, you see their beautiful logo here above my not so beautiful head.
And they're beautiful. They've got their beautiful logo. They've also got beautiful beers. That's what they're known for, is their fantastic beers. Whether it is, especially their IPAs. I just can't tell you like how many people who are come to me with like, I know you like hazy IPAs. Where should I go? And I get to say Black Stack Brewing, or alternately, by the way, Brixworth, their restaurant / partner down near the North Loop near Target Field. But you know, their flagship is the local 755 New England IPA. They also have some, I think their Slow French Pilsner is the best, you know, light-ish lager in the Twin Cities right now. Pull Tabs Pale Ale, their Strawberry Rhubarb Sour. But the best part is that while those beers, while they were really good, they were not widely available. And now they are widely available. They have a new distributor, so you can get their Black Sack beer all over the state of Minnesota, from Grand Marais to Rochester, Winona to Fargo. Just go to your local liquor store And A, I think you're going to find it at your local liquor store. You're not going to be disappointed when you get there. But B, if you're not, then ask for them because it's easy enough to get from the distributor. The distributor's everywhere, right? Or so you can do that, or you can stop by Black Stack Brewing. That's near 94 and 280, which also is a great tap room and a fairly large tap room, including on 190-inch big screen TV that have for Minnesota Twins games. So stop by Black Stack Brewing, near 94 and 280, or even easier, just ask for them at your local liquor store.
Okay, we're not going to talk a ton about the Tiger series. Obviously, they take 2 out of 3. The pitching staff, I mean, they scored some runs, which was good to see.
We did talk a little bit about the Tiger series on our Patreon. We should just mention patreon.com/Gleeman. That's below us right there. You can see that. We had about 400 or 500 people sign up for Patreon in the last 2 weeks. And I think you're going to enjoy it if you try it out. And right now, if you join for an annual, if you try rather than just $8 a month, or you can do the annual one, in which case you get like a month and a half free, something like that. So.
Okay. They win 2 out of 3. The pitching staff had 26 strikeouts and 3 walks. They had 1 walk in each of the 3 games, which the Twins are a low walk. I'm going to look where they rank overall this year. I mean, that's been one of the strengths within a year that hasn't been that strong, really, or disappointingly mediocre, I guess, from a pitching staff standpoint. But the Twins have the fewest walks in the American League by 38 over the Tampa Bay Rays. They have 292 and the Rays have 330. Now, you trade half your bullpen and, you're without Pablo Lopez, etc. It's like, well, do the season totals mean much? Which is why it's good to see, even if it's some of these kind of seat filler guys, they're throwing strikes. I mean, kind of like I said, with it's a little freeing not to live and die on the wins and losses quite as much, or at least when they lose, it's like, okay, yeah, they lost, whatever. I feel like the bullpen is kind of the example of that on a team-wide level, where you're seeing usage for guys that you never saw. You're seeing guys that just have no business being in the majors, and some of them pitched pretty well during that Tiger series. But you're also seeing, like, okay, put Thomas Hatch in there. Thomas Hatch was a 30-year-old waiver claim 36 hours before he appeared in the game for the Twins. Go ahead and throw 4 2/3 innings. Just keep going.
Right. He was great.
It's one of those where it's like you're on a road trip and you don't have that much gas, but let's just keep going how long this takes us. You're gonna start to see a lot of that in terms of bullpen appearances where the role doesn't really matter. Like, yes, they would like to, if they have a late lead, hand it over to Cole Sands or something like that. But realistically, you're seeing a lot more already multi-inning appearances because it's like, all right, this guy's pitching okay, let's send him out for a second inning. They didn't really used to do that before. This guy's pitching good in the middle innings. Let's just have him make a start, basically. He can throw 70 pitches or whatever. In part because they're not that invested in these guys, and I don't mean they're going to like intentionally injure them, but like the workload and the, let's try to keep him under this many pitches. It's like these guys are pitching for their futures here. A lot of these guys, they're claiming guys off. They're just cycling through names at this point. Like if you're a AAA pitcher, especially if you're a AAA starter and you have any sort of major league experience and you show up on the waiver wire over the next month and the Minnesota Twins do not at least put in a claim for you, that is a real bad sign for your career, because they're just cycling through guys. Some of them are pitching well. I don't have super high hopes, big picture for them, but that's definitely what we saw in the Tiger series. I mean, they scored some runs. They were running around a little bit. They were getting some clutch hits. They were trying to steal some bases. It was, I think, probably overblown to say that, they've changed stylistically and more aggressive, but they've changed the roster. Like it's just going to be a different roster. Like I don't know that they've really, and we actually talked about this on the Patreon last time, but I don't know that they've really added a significant amount of speed because, yes,
they also subtracted a significant amount of speed. Right?
Like, yes, Keaschall and Austin Martin are going to run a lot more than the guys they replaced, maybe, except the guys they replaced were Bader and Castro, who were really only 2 out of the 3 guys along with Buxton who ran. I think, kind of like I talked about with the bullpen, there's maybe like a freeing element from Baldelli's standpoint too, which is like, you know what? Let's try to steal third. You know what? Let's put a hit and run on. You know what? Let's bunt here and put a squeeze on. Or in some of the cases, the players are deciding to do that themselves. And maybe it's a lower pressure environment there where it's like you're Cody Clemens, there's a guy on third. It's like, why don't I bunt here? What the hell? How much trouble can I really get into? It's the team is essentially a substitute teacher. You know what I mean? Like, how much trouble are they going to send me to the principal's office with a substitute teacher? So it does add, I guess, unpredictability, and then just kind of learning what some of these guys' strengths and weaknesses are. The one takeaway, I guess, and boy, we spent a solid half hour of Wednesday's show talking about and praising and dreaming on Luke Keaschall because he returned after 3.5 months on the injured list with a broken forearm, and he hits a home run off Chris Paddock in his first at bat. And then we talk about him for a half hour, and then later that day, Wednesday, drives in 3 more runs, 2 more hits. You couldn't draw up a better return after 3.5 months, especially for a guy who, before the injury, played all of a week in the majors, and looked great.
And by the way, hasn't really torn it up at AAA. Like, we should kind of mention,
although he's been rehabbing the whole time.
Well, that's true. Yes, you're right. Yeah, we talked a lot about that in the half hour that we talked on the Patreon too.
Yeah, so that's obviously one of the bright spots at this point, and in terms of stuff to watch, we'll touch on him more later, but Luke Keaschall is maybe near the top or at the top of that list, and you're just hoping he stays healthy. You're hoping, he's going to come back down to earth, but I do think we've seen a lot, not in terms of, he's got a 410 batting, like, okay, obviously that's not gonna last, but the individual skills here in terms of plate discipline, in terms of speed, in terms of being able to pull the ball with some authority, hitting the first home run, but he's also had a few doubles here. Like, there's a lot to like, not even setting aside the out of this world numbers that he has through 10 games or whatever in the majors, because those are what they are. But the individual skill set, I think, is exciting. So he's back from the IL, and then I think, if not tonight, certainly the expectation, it sounds like during this weekend series at Target Field against the Royals, Byron Buxton will be returning from the IL, and that would basically be 2 weeks out from when he was placed on the IL, which is always, I'll take that with him.
It's a good sign,
yeah. So, and that would add another speed dimension. Although I do wonder, with a rib cage injury and just the state of the team and all this stuff, like, he's 17 for 17 on stolen bases this year, which has been incredible to watch. And at various points this year, he's run a lot, like, more than he has in 5, 6, 7 years. I wonder if they'll kind of put a yellow light on that a little bit instead of a green light, where it's like, do we really want Byron Buxton going absolutely crazy on the bases here? And he's got a rib cage injury. We're not playing for much. Do we want to kind of get him to the finish line here in one piece if we can? And
I know what he's going to want.
Yeah, but I mean, what he wants is often led to injuries too. So, I mean, the stolen bases themselves in games that don't matter, stolen bases are a lot of fun, and they can be valuable, especially when you're as good at them as Byron Buxton is, 17 out of 17. He has the literal highest stolen base percentage in the history of Major League Baseball at like 91%. But they're also one of the most common ways to get injured.
Yes. Right.
And, I don't know. I'd like to see him steal third once just so we can stop talking about that. So that was...
I'm just spring training.
Yeah. That was the kind of 2 biggest takeaways from the Detroit series. I don't know. Should we just start in on some of these?
So the idea here is we've got like 12 things to look at. You wrote about 6 of them today, so people could pick up your 6. I'm going to just try and riff off of those 6 with 6 more. Okay. And you start with your 6, and I will interrupt you if I've got something related to that. How does that sound?
Don't you dare interrupt. There's no interrupting on this podcast, John. Exactly. Everyone knows that. Neither of us interrupt each other.
And midway through, we'll get to the sponsors. All right.
Yeah.
There we got it.
That's the interruption. All right. Well, I guess I kind of mentioned this, so I'll start a little out of order in terms of my article, but who cares about my article? For the new guys, first impressions. So we talked Alan Roden, who's a left-handed hitter. I would say corner outfielder, although it sounds like they're going to play him a little bit in center just to see what they have there. He was one of 2 guys they acquired in the Louis Varland trade from Toronto. He's the only one add to the roster. I would say they acquired at least 4 guys they acquired 4 guys who have Major League experience. And so you could have just added all 4 of those guys to the Major League roster. They decided to send 3 of them to St. Paul, Outman, Bradley, and Mick Abel. And they decided to add Roden, which is interesting. I don't necessarily know why that is, other than Maybe they just feel like he doesn't have as much to work on. Like they don't really want to tinker that much. I think with Bradley and Abel, especially given that they're pitchers, we already actually saw Bradley made his first start yesterday, the day before for AAA, and was throwing his splitter a lot. And those are the type of things that you might want a guy to spend 3 weeks with the AAA coaching staff so that we can kind of check under the hood a little bit and start to institute some of the ideas that the Twins have that maybe the previous organization didn't have. With Outman, I don't really know what the idea is. Somebody suggested to me it was service time based, which I'll never put past the Twins, but a 28-year-old service time guy seems a little...
Well, the only advantage is you have to make fewer decisions when it comes to arbitration and whether or not they're worth their arbitration money. But I agree.
James Outman's hitting 140 in his last 2 years. I don't think that's going to break the bank arbitration-wise, but who knows? But yeah, Rodin is the guy you're going to get a look at. And, he popped his first homer during the Detroit series. I think he's stylistically maybe like a less raw power and more plate discipline, strike zone control version of Trevor Larnach, in that he's a left-handed platoon bat. He's 5'11". Trevor Larnach's like 6'3", so you got that. He's right. More athletic, but what I mean is like you're hoping he's a guy against right-handed pitching that can either bat at the top of the lineup or in that like number 5, number 6 spot, something like that. His major league track record so far is pretty weak. He made the Blue Jays out of spring training at age 25. Played like 40-something games, hit pretty badly. They sent him back to AAA. When the Twins acquired him last week, he was at AAA. Off to not the greatest start with the Twins, but it's a handful of games. Like I said, he popped his first homer against Detroit. Overall, though, if you look at the AAA track record, he's played parts of 3 years at AAA, and he's been excellent all 3 years. He's a career 320 hitter at AAA. He's got about as many walks as strikeouts, which is always a good indicator. He's got, maybe 15, 20 homer power, maybe 12, 15, 18 stolen base speed. They're playing him in center field, so obviously they at least think he's got enough speed to not embarrass himself out there. It's interesting because, left-handed hitting corner outfielder ain't exactly a point of weakness organizationally in terms of the volume, at least, if not the quality of guys that you have, including Larnach, including Wallner. You have guys like Emmanuel Rodriguez at AAA. You just had Alex Kirilloff retire. Like, that has been a skill set and a player type that they have been long on basically forever. I mean, even the previous Twins regime had not just corner outfielders, but they had such left-handed dominant lineups, even like the, Corey Koski, Jock Jones, Minkiewicz era, and then obviously the Mauer Morneau era. Like, they were, I think in part they built that because they felt like it was an advantage at the Metrodome. To have a bunch of left-handed hitters, but that's stylistically, I would say the Falvey front office has leaned into that even more. So I know people saw Rodin get acquired and go, well, don't we have 4 versions of that already? And I'm not going to say no on that. However, it's a new version. It's a new toy. He has less major league experience, which compared to like Larnach, there's fewer maybe warts and flaws and weaknesses exposed, at least in the Twins' mind.
Can I tell you what I think the the thing to watch here is? Larnach gets expensive next year.
Larnach is not really though.
Not really expensive.
Somewhat expensive.
But right. Compare for the Twins right now, potentially somewhat expensive. Like at the point where he's $4 to $5 million, which is not expensive for a regular, right? But that's he's in his second year of arbitration,
right?
I think at that point, and you've got Wallner who's cheaper, you've got Rodin who's cheaper, and I don't think that necessarily means that the Twins are done with Larnach. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they would, not offer him arbitration, but I think they would be much more interested in trading him or moving him or something in the offseason to save a little bit of that extra money and possibly plug that someplace else. So the question becomes, can Rodin prove to, over a 2-month period here, which is, I think, difficult to do, that he can sort of take over, Larnach's role at a fraction of the cost.
Yeah, I mean, Larnach's making 2.1 this year. There's built-in raises via arbitration, which we always talk about, but I mean, he hasn't performed very well. His numbers in terms of an arbitration context, he's got 15 homers and 48 RBIs, which is something they look at a lot. He's hitting 246. He's got a 733 OPS. I will say this: I think there's very little chance that on opening day of next season, Wallner, Larnach, and Roden are all three on the Major League roster. I just think there's extremely little chance of that. And so, we've already seen this year they've been pretty hesitant to play Wallner and Larnach together in the same outfield defensively. And rightfully, I think both those guys have looked very bad to me defensively, even worse than in past years. I think with Larnach, he's 28, so he's 3 years older than Roden. This is his fifth season with the Twins, and back-to-back years now where he's played 100-plus games. He's got over 1,500 career plate appearances in the majors, and he's a .239 hitter with a .406 slugging percentage. And by the way, he's been largely platooned, which means he's faced a lot bigger percentage of right-handed pitchers than left-handed pitchers. So those are favorable matchups, and for him to have a 101 OPS plus where 100 is average, which means he's basically been a league average hitter. And that's not terrible, except for a lumbering, poor defensive left or right fielder, you need to be an above average hitter. And he just has so rarely been that for full seasons or even months long stretches. And this year is a good example. Like, he got off to a pretty decent start. A month ago, he had a 110 OPS plus or a 115, and now he's under. He's at 99 because he's slumped, and that's with a couple of homers during this Detroit series. So I think in terms of the odd man out, seems like he would be at the top of that list.
He's the odd man out, I think, mostly based on financial stuff. I took a look at his and Wallner's splits over the last couple of days, and they're really not that different, right? Larnach has got a 790 OPS versus right-handed batters. Wallner has a 820 OPS versus right-handed batters. That's a difference. It's a 30-point difference. It's not a huge difference. The difference is that Larnach has faced 4 times as many left-handed pitchers as Wallner has, or 3 or 4 times as many pitchers as Wallner has. Now, and they're also stylistically different.
Read their career numbers, John.
Huh?
Read their career numbers.
Yeah, I'm talking about in 2025 this year. You're talking about whether or not we've seen him. And what we've seen from Larnach is almost exactly the same right-handed hitting numbers as we saw last year.
Not right-handed
basically
hitting.
790 OPS.
Against right-handed pitching, you mean?
Against right-handed pitching, right.
Yeah.
And what we've seen, I haven't taken a look at what the left-handed numbers are, but basically he's faced left-handers a lot more this year. They made he got the Kepler mantle of being the left-hander in the lineup, and that doesn't work out well for him. He's not very good versus left-handed pitching. So ultimately, I'm not saying he's a bad hitter. He's, like you said, overall you combine those numbers. And by the way, he's still, when I say he's faced a lot more left-handed pitchers, he still has actually faced very few left-handed pitchers. He has maybe 20% of his bats versus left-handed pitchers. He's still been largely protected. It's not been an everyday player for that. So, that overall numbers that you're seeing are representative of what you're seeing for overall numbers, right? Is he worth $4 or $5 million? Probably. Could another team look at him and say, "Hey, that's a good guy that we could plug in for $4 or $5 million"? Sure. But as you mentioned, we've got Roden on the roster now. We've got Outman on the roster. You've got Emmanuel Rodriguez coming up behind him. All of them are left-handed hitting outfielders. At some point, it's not urgent that you move him. It's not necessary that you move him. But if you're looking to save $5 million to plug it towards a first baseman or a DH or something like that in the offseason, that would seem to be a fairly logical thing to do.
They tried to trade Trevor Larnach. There was very little interest in Trevor Larnach at the trade deadline, so they just kept him, which is fine. Over the last few weeks, I've talked a lot about the idea, whether it's front office, whether it's roster, whether it's sort of how people talk about this team, the Emperor's New Clothes aspect. To me, Trevor Larnach is a screaming example of that. You're talking about a 28-year-old poor defensive corner outfielder who is in his 5th season of regular playing time and has essentially a league average OPS while being shielded from left-handed pitchers. And we got to act like he's something. We got to act like are they still going to build around him? Like, this is a prime example of their inability to do things, which is to develop a former first-round pick in Trevor Larnach, who at one point had a lot of promise and has not taken an ounce of step forward at any level and is probably having a worse season now, in part because they tried to expand his role, but he flopped in that too. Here's what I will say, and I went on a rant about this on the Patreon, so I won't necessarily repeat the whole thing, but I do not understand why Matt Wallner and Trevor Larnach get lumped in together, other than the fact that they are both big left-handed hitters who play the corner outfield. You cited his splits with Larnach. And yes, if you're going to use Larnach, use him against right-handed pitchers. He has a 768 career OPS against right-handed pitchers. And you said this year was what, 780?
790, something like that.
Right. First of all, that's not that good for a platoon.
No, it's all right.
Outfield.
I mean, yeah, I did do a search on sort of all right-hand or all left-handed hitters with over 200 plate appearances, and what they were hitting versus right-handed, and 790 is right about in the middle.
Yeah,
it's 790 and 820. Well, one's just a little above the middle, and one's a little above below the middle. Right.
Trevor Larnach's career OPS against right-handed pitchers is 768. Matt Wallner's career OPS against right-handed pitchers is 910. It's 150 points higher. And even this year, when I think we would all agree that Matt Wallner has been underwhelming, he's beaten him by 30-something points of OPS. Yep. I don't understand. And by the way, he's younger and cheaper and team controlled for longer. I truly don't understand why they get lumped in together. Matt Wallner has one of the 10 highest OPS in the history of the Minnesota Twins, and Trevor Larnach is having trouble being an average hitter when platooned. I really don't understand it, other than I guess just people look at him and they go, big left-handed hitter who strikes out a lot or whatever. But even that, stylistically, they aren't that similar anymore. Like, I really don't understand it. And that's why when I'm looking forward to 2026 and we're talking about Rodin, Wallner, Larnach, yeah, the money thing, I just think it's time to move on. I mean, yes, if Larnach was minimum salaried, still maybe they hold on to him, but you've seen 1,500 plate appearances from the guy. He's okay against right-handed pitching. He's not usable against left-handed pitching. He's a bad defensive player. He hasn't really been all that durable, and they've played him at DH to try to make him more durable, which is fine, but why act as if? You know what I mean? Like, and that's part of, I think, systemic to this whole team is we got to act as if. We got to act as if all these guys are still promising. And then what happens is you act as if, and then all of a sudden, they DFA'd that guy. You know, it's going to be with Jose Miranda too. Like, we got to act as if he's got, I'm not saying you're doing that, but just in general, we got to act as if Jose Miranda's got promise. We got to act as if, and then they're just going to cut him. And it's like, oh no, he didn't have any promise. I just think it's time to get real about some of these guys, especially on the hitting front. And when you got a 28-year-old bad defensive corner outfielder who's got a 406 career slugging percentage, what are you talking about? And I do think, to your point, that, the money does force them into a decision on him. But I also think they were trying to trade him and there wasn't that much value. And so I don't know that there's going to be people lining up around the block to trade for Trevor Larnach and pay him $5 million next year.
Well, that's why the story of Rodin's development is a story to kind of watch, right? Because you don't have to move him for $5 million. You don't have to DFA him. You're probably not going to get a fantastic offer for him. So there isn't a lot of urgency in doing this. The question is, can Rodin push it enough to be able to make you go, yeah, you know what? Let's just roll with this. Well, we'll roll with Rodin, and we've got a couple of guys in the backstage that could maybe come in here if it doesn't work. So.
Yes, I mean, I think that was the thought process. I think that is what they will do. I guess I will be surprised. I will definitely be surprised if all three of those guys are on the opening day roster together next year. I guess even individually, I will be mildly surprised if Trevor Larnach is on the team next year, barring some great final 2 months or whatever. But with Rodin, He's much faster and more athletic than Larnach or Wallner, but he's a much better defensive outfielder than either of those guys. To the point that he can, at least fake it in center field for a while if you need it, which is valuable. He's different in that I think he's going to strike out a decent amount, but he's not going to be a high strikeout guy. He's going to draw walks. He's going to try to hit singles and doubles. He'll occasionally pop a home run or whatever. So it's a little bit stylistically different. If you sub out for next year's team Larnach for Rodin, you are getting a little bit more athletic. You're getting a little faster. You're adding maybe 8 or 10 steals to the bottom line. You're getting better defensively. Yeah. So it incrementally kind of pushes them towards a stylistic change that I think they would want. But ultimately, Roden makes $800,000. Larnach's going to make, like we said, $4 or $5 million. And the other thing is, if Roden cannot approximate or better Larnach's basically league average hitting, then you did a real bad job in that trade for Louis Varland with Toronto. Like, Kendry Rojas is the guy they wanted even more than Roden, but they very clearly targeted Roden, and the fact that he was the guy that got called up right away tells you they want to take a long look at him and they think he's ready to be a contributor. On the new guys front, so obviously Roden is the one we're going to watch now because he's the only one there. But like I said earlier, I would expect to see, and there's really no reason not to see, Taj Bradley, who they got from the Tampa Bay Rays for Griffin Jackson. He has 350-something innings in the majors across 3 different seasons for the Rays. I think they're tinkering with some things at AAA with him. And then Mick Abel, who's the 23-year-old prospect they got as the part of the 2-player deal from Philly for Duran. He made like 6 starts for Philly. I think that's a more legitimate, like, send him to AAA for a little more seasoning. I mean, to send Bradley to AAA after almost 400 innings in the majors screams we want to tinker with him or we want to maybe mess with his service time. I haven't looked too close about that. But with Abel, I mean, I would expect to see, and I would want to see both of those guys down the stretch for the Twins. And I don't really think there's any reason not to see both of those guys.
That's what I was going to wonder about. Is I wonder if you're going to be disappointed, because I'll give you one of my stories to watch is, the health of the big 3 in the rotation. You've got Pablo Lopez coming back from an injury. Is he going to be the same guy? You've got Bailey Ober fighting his way through this injury. Is he going to be the same guy in 2026? Like, can he get past it? And you've got the Joe Ryan question, which we've been asking all year, but we haven't been able to answer it because we haven't gotten to August and September, which is, can Joe Ryan stay healthy for a full year? And those 3 are still supposed to be the top of this rotation next year right now. Unless one of them gets expensive enough that things, or they get offers enough that they're going to change it. But I mean, I think if that was going to happen for Ryan, we would have seen it at the trade deadline. And so, if those 3 are pitching regularly, and we've got some other guys that we want to get some answers on, whether it's Simeon Wood Richardson or Zebby Matthews, etc. I'll talk about that as one of the other keys. I don't know how. I agree with you that there's not you should be able to find some way to get some occasional starts with those guys to kind of see them up here at target field.
But who cares if they're starts?
I just don't know if we're going to see them. Huh? Say again?
Who cares if they're starts or not? Like, what's the difference at this point?
You're thinking more in a bullpen kind of situation?
Well, one thing I'm not going to sit here and say they got too much pitching on this pitching staff to call up 2 former top prospects that they just acquired as the centerpieces of big trades. Taj Bradley's 24. He's got 400 innings in the majors. Mick Abel's 23. He's already made a handful of starts in the majors. Like, obviously these were future-looking moves, but I'm definitely not going to sit here and say they don't have room for those guys on the pitching staff. Now, would I like to see them start? Yeah, sure. But, I mean, we just kind of talked about the state of the bullpen and the pitching staff right now, where it's a lot of seat filler guys, where the roles are kind of out the window. You got openers, you got guys coming in third who are pitching 4 innings, you got guys pitching multiple innings. Like, those are clearly 2 of your better pitchers now at this point, or at least highest upside pitchers at this point. I also think there's a chance at some point, maybe we'll talk about this more as it ties to a different story, but I don't know that Bailey Ober is going to make every start down the stretch.
Well, I wonder that.
I don't know that even Pablo Lopez. First of all, Pablo Lopez isn't even going to be back for several more weeks. So, and we don't know how he's going to look. We don't know if they're going to shut him down. We don't know how that's going to go. And even Joe Ryan, I don't know that Joe Ryan is going to be pitching every 5th day down the stretch. So, to me, take a look at the new guys, and there's no reason not to from a service time standpoint, I don't think. And even if there is, like, who cares? I mean, they're clearly, both of them, going to be a big part of the 2026 pitching staff. And to me, I guess ultimately the big takeaway from all this stuff is I kind of view the next 2 months as part of 2026. Like, it's not from a record standpoint, obviously, but it has more to do with 2026 in my mind than 2025, because 2025 is a lost cause at this point. So I would like to see them. And then James Outman, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm, president of the James Outman fan club, but you traded Brock Stewart even up for him. He's 28 years old. He's got 300 and something games in the majors. Get him up. Let's go. Like maybe they're tinkering something with his swing or whatever, but like he's crushed AAA pitching for like 3 years in a row. Like got a 980 OPS or something at AAA. You are not learning a single thing about his performance when he's facing AAA pitching, unless you're trying to make some tweaks mechanically. So maybe they're doing that. But if he's not up in September and Bradley and Abel aren't up in September, I kind of take away what I said at the beginning about how the reps and the playing time have value, because you got to put some guys in that role that you want to use, that you might actually want to plan around. So that's the new guys. I don't think any of the other trade pickups are really possibilities to be called up. So that's, 4 guys, 2 pitchers, 2 hitters on that front. And then, they're not new guys, but I would say we're already seeing with Julian, Martin, Funderburk, Topa, Gasper, and like I talked about, I kind of think maybe Larnick too. You might not agree on that front, but that group, plus or minus a name or two, they're not new guys, but this might be the last impression for them to make over the next few months.
This didn't make one of my top 6, but one of the things I'm watching both at the major league level and sort of at the minor league level is sort of the changing of the guard of prospects or of promising future players, right? We've had this wave that has gone through and has largely been disappointing, almost completely disappointing.
It's like a puddle, not a wave.
It was not a tsunami for sure, right? And meanwhile, I'm watching, Gabby Gonzalez get called up from AA to AAA and Culpepper raking in AA, and Jenkins starting to hit a lot in AA as a 19-year-old. And I'm starting to dream on about what this lineup might look like in 2027 and what that changing of the guard looks like. And this feels like a last gasp for the previous group to sort of prove something. And some of them, I think the last gasp was even over. Like I think Jose Miranda's last gasp happened back in April.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that injury we laughed about at the time because it's an absurd injury. We were told that by the Twins that after being demoted in late April, I guess, to AAA, he went to Target to shop, and he had one of those like cases of water bottles, and it slipped out of his hands, and he tried to catch it, and he hurt himself, and he went on the IL for several weeks, and he's hitting now like 1-9. I mean, he's been the worst hitter for the Saints this season. Yeah. And I'm talking about guys they've discarded, guys they've called up, guys like he's been a horrendous AAA hitter, and he's still only like 26, 27 years old. I mean, it was this time about 13 months ago, he was setting an MLB record with 12 consecutive at-bats with a hit, and now he's the worst AAA player on a mediocre AAA team. And I can't really explain that.
I mean, all I can think back is like in 2020, when he came up last year and really raked, we said, that 2023 season where he was just terrible for the whole year, that shoulder injury must have been a much bigger issue than we thought it was, right? That there was, at the time, the whole 2023 season, we're like, why isn't this guy hitting? Yeah, he had that shoulder injury, but that's not supposed to, like he says, that doesn't affect him. And, he was playing, it affects his ability in the field, but not his hitting. And then 2024, we're like, well, that must have affected him. I don't know if it's, if this is also a sign that there's something injurious, for lack of a better word, going on there, or if he just can run hot and cold at a season at a time. I don't know exactly what it is.
I mean,
it's been such a roller coaster ride.
This is not hot and cold. I mean, a guy with his experience level and track record and shown ability to hit major league pitching, it'd be one thing if he was hitting 250 at AAA. Right. We could go, okay, well, he's lost some of this, or he's upset, or he's not in the right headspace. He's hitting like 1-9. I mean, he's just been horrible at AAA.
Also, it's not even like it was he had a great 2024 and a bad 2025. He switched on a dime in the middle of the 2024 season. He was hitting like crazy in the middle of July, and by middle of August and end of September, he couldn't find a hit to save his life. So,
okay, let's switch to a different topic here, which is I'll pick this one. We talked about it a little at the beginning, but the new left side of the infield. So part of the domino effect of salary dumping Carlos Correa on the Houston Astros at the deadline is now you need an everyday shortstop. And we've seen Brooks Lee play some shortstop last year and this year in place of Correa. We've this year especially seen him bounce around second base, third base a lot. Kind of an even split, something like that, I would say. Now the path has been cleared for him to just play shortstop. And I don't mean like he'll never play second or third or something, but we're going to see him play a lot of shortstop. This is a full exposure to a concept that has not been proven one way or the other. And I don't know that 2 months is going to prove it one way or the other, but 2 months is going to provide a lot more information about Brooks Lee, Major League shortstop, than we knew at any point until now. And it's been interesting. Like, I don't think he will tell you, and I've heard him say, that he likes playing shortstop more than the other positions and feels more comfortable there and feels like he's better there because he's played shortstop his entire life. Whereas, I mean, that's true of a lot of guys. A lot of guys play shortstop their whole life till they get to the majors, and then they don't play shortstop because everybody plays shortstop. Looking at his numbers right now, he started 44 games now at shortstop for the Twins for his career since debuting last summer. 42 starts at third base, 36 starts at second base. That's a pretty even split.
Yeah, it is.
Across three positions. Now, you would expect a shortstop, if they're great at shortstop, they're going to be spectacular at the other two spots. If they're okay at shortstop, they're probably going to be very good at the other spots. I actually think he hasn't. I thought he looked better last year at third base and second base than he's looked this year, especially third base, I will say. And I actually think, I don't know what the numbers say because it's a small sample number anyway, but I actually think he's looked better at shortstop this year than at the other two positions. It does seem to go along with what he says. He just looks more comfortable there. The actions there seem just sort of more natural to him. I think, he has some skill set issues there in terms of athleticism, size, speed, range. He doesn't have the strongest arm, but I think he has shown an ability to sort of improvise there, which is a key element to being a good shortstop. Charging in on balls. Can you throw on the run? Can you dive and get it and get up and get a decent throw off? And
that's the sort of thing that comes when you've played there your whole life.
Exactly.
By the way.
Or we saw a turn double play against the Tigers where the second baseman flipped it to him. He was coming across the field, went across the base and smoothly through to first base. Those are just things that come with, tens of thousands of reps over the last decade or whatever for a shortstop. And so that's huge because particularly when paired with his hitting has not been impressive at all. And I know he hit a homer against the Tigers, which is good to see. But, we're looking at a guy now who has 145 games in the majors. So basically one full season in the majors. He's hitting 237 with a 637 OPS. That's a 75 OPS plus. And even this year, which has been better than last year, he has an 80 OPS plus. So 100 is average, which means he's roughly 20% worse than a league average player. Like we talked about with Larnach. Larnach is basically right at 100. Well, the flip side, we talked about like with Larnach, an average OPS for a plotting defensive left fielder is not good because those guys tend to out hit the average. Well, the flip side is, shortstops and even second basemen, good defensive infielders tend not to hit as well as the average player. And so the bar for Brooks Lee to hit at an acceptable level, or let's say a starting caliber level, if he's able to be a good defensive shortstop or even an average acceptable defensive shortstop, is pretty low. Now it's higher than he's shown so far for sure. But if you can put up a 95 or even 100 OPS plus league average and you're a decent shortstop, that's a really good all-around player.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, we don't know yet that he can be a decent defensive shortstop on an everyday basis. And he's not proven that he can be anywhere near an average hitter for an everyday basis. But that's one of the things to watch, maybe near the top of my list in terms of not new guys, just guys that have been here. Can Brooks Lee give them an overall confidence level heading into next season, heading into this offseason, that he can be your starting everyday shortstop and he can be solid defensively and a contributor offensively? And I think he's capable of it, but I think it's definitely he needs to show it on both sides of the ball. And
I'm glad you covered the defensive part first, because that to me is sort of the thing I'm going to be watching most closely over August and September. I'll give him more time to figure out how to develop as a hitter. You mentioned his 80 OPS plus. Well, it was even worse last year. So, at least he's trending in the right direction in that thing.
Another 13, 14 years, he'll be over 100 at this rate.
But, they're going to need a shortstop next year. Like, that's something that's going to have to happen over this. Either if he can't handle it, they're going to have to find themselves a shortstop over the offseason. Right. And, so the question is, can you pencil him in as the shortstop, feel comfortable enough with him defensively to trot him out there every day, and then take what you can get offensively, comfortable enough that he will continue to develop offensively, that he'll get to the point where, maybe he can be there on a more regular basis, or maybe you can, cover things for a year or two and wait for another shortstop to be coming up from the minor leagues.
Right. Which they have both Culpepper and Merrick Houston. There's no guarantee that Culpepper will be a above average shortstop. I think the general consensus is Houston will be an above average shortstop, but he's also currently playing at single A and was drafted a month ago, not even a month ago. There's a window here until at least next summer for Brooksley to just take hold of that position and maybe never give it back, or at least hold it for several years. But there's also a window here where if he hits as poorly as he has overall and he looks a little overmatched playing shortstop every day for the next 40 or 50 games, maybe you go into the offseason and you say, all right, we're going to play him at second base, or we're going to make him a utility guy or whatever. And then you need a shortstop to at least keep the position warm until Culpepper is ready. I think they would probably lean on the side of almost, unless it's a total disaster for Brooksley defensively, I think they would lean towards he's the shortstop opening day next year, no matter what, because they don't have the resources, and they also don't really have the motivation from a contention standpoint to go spend $10 million or go make a trade for some 30-year-old shortstop to be a placeholder. So along with him playing shortstop, the left side of the infield now is Royce Lewis is at third, and he's been playing third pretty much every day, near every day.
And fielding much better than he was last year. Like, a lot of those questions have been answered, which is good.
I mean, one of the things that was weird about him last year was he had so many throwing problems last year. And it wasn't so much a range issue or an athleticism issue, and he looked pretty smooth over there, and then he would just bounce a throw or airmail a throw, and they definitely worked with him to change his arm angle and smooth out some of the throwing mechanics, where he's a lot more just sort of form fit on this stuff. And he's had very few throwing issues, but then just in general, I think he's looked good to me at third base. Like, I'm not going to say he's going to win any Gold Gloves over there, but he's looked solid. There's been very few plays this season where you cringe at something Royce Lewis did over at third base. Now, unfortunately, he has
at home plate. It's a little you can cringe,
and he's been showing some signs of I don't know, some signs of life at the plate since he came back this most recent time, and that's another big factor over the next 2 months. Can Royce Lewis finish on a high note and put together 150 more at bats where he hits for some power? He looks. I'm not expecting him to be back to the guy who's homer in every third game or anything, but can he look like a middle of the order building block type of guy again? And if he can trend towards that even by the end of the season, combined with the improved play at third base, I think you can feel pretty good. Now, unfortunately with Royce Lewis, you're going to need a good backup third baseman. It's similar to how we used to talk about Buxton in center field. Like, no matter how good he looks down the stretch, you're not going to go into next season going, well, there's 150 starts at third base by Royce Lewis. And so I wonder if, Brooksley could factor into that too. So just as a combo, as a left side of the infield, you're looking at a number 1 pick and a number 8 pick. You're looking at 2 guys who are consensus top 100 prospects. You're looking at 2 guys who at various points were the Twins' number 1 prospect coming up through the system. You're looking at, despite the fact that it seems like Royce Lewis has been around forever, he's 26. And Brooksley's only 24. And if the Twins are going to be a retool instead of a rebuild, they are going to need both those guys to be good building block, both sides of the ball contributors, whether it's, Lee at shortstop or somewhere else, but they need those guys to lock in offensively and defensively so that you can at least say, all right, we got these two relatively young guys under team control that we can start to build, the secondary part of the lineup around. And unfortunately, neither of them have locked in on both sides of the ball at this point. But again, this is something over the next 2 months we're going to learn a lot more about both of them.
Yeah, Royce Lewis entered this season, and this was after a terrible finish to last season, by the way. Entered this season with a 126 OPS plus, and he's in this season he's got an 82 OPS plus, which is equal to that of Brooks Lee, who can at least play shortstop, right? And we've mentioned, Royce Lewis has been heating up a little bit. I mean, he's been heating up. He hasn't been lighting the world on fire here. It's not like he's been instant offense here. He's been, an 800 OPS hitter instead of a 600 OPS hitter, which is, we just said 800 OPS hitter gets you right about an average hitter, right? I don't know if that's enough for
no. An 800 OPS is like a 120. We were talking about Larnach having
a that's right. You're right. I'm sorry. You're right. I was thinking the 790 was the 100 OPS, but that's his right-handed one.
So yeah.
Anyway, that's fine. That'll play enough at third base. That isn't who we thought he was going to be. That isn't a cornerstone number 2, 3, 4 hitter in this lineup, but it's somebody that you can, you can ride while he hopefully tries to figure some things out and maybe take another step forward. We'll see.
Before we talk about the next one, let's talk about our last couple of sponsors here.
Yeah, let's first of all, I'll talk about Harry's, and I'm going to give you a little behind-the-scenes stuff. And Aaron, this is some stuff that you do not know.
Oh, wow.
This is our last Harry's ad.
Really?
We have had Harry's ads for 12 years, I think. They are our longest sponsor of all time, and I got a mail behind the scenes. We don't get these ads directly from Harry's. We get these ads from a third party that works with Harry's, and it turns out that Harry's is moving to a different third party, and as such, that third party came to us and said, we got to cancel all the ads from the rest of the season. They're moving to a different third party. You're going to have to talk to them. And so, I kind of made me think, what do we have to say now for the last chance for all of our listeners who after a dozen years of hearing us talk about, let's see, basically it's half the price. It's delivered right to you. You don't have to go to the store. It's got 5 blades. It gives you a great shave. My wife likes my face better than she ever did, which is saying something for somebody who's been married 35 years. What can I say? The great offer that we're going to be providing, which is, similar to what we've done. What can we do to kind of get you on a last-ditch effort towards Harry's? And I'll say this one, which is for 12 years, they've supported an independent podcast. And that they were doing that before a lot of people were doing independent podcasts. And, when you use the promo code that we're going to give you and such, it points to them saying, yeah, we have, and they've done this while, other big razor players were sponsoring halftime shows and such. They were always doing that. And so I had that all prepared and I said that, and you're going to read the offer in a second. And then the new third party came to me and said, we are, Harry says you guys do a really good job. We'd like to work with you too. So we will probably be doing Harry's.
I'm glad I didn't say anything horrible about him. Like, we'll break up with him. I never want to see him again. Held my tongue on that one.
This is not truly your last chance to support Gleeman and the Geek. Use Harry's razors. But if you do want to use Harry's razors, try them out. Here's the deal.
You can get their special trial set, which you get the 5-blade razor with the weighted handle, you get the foaming shave gel, and it comes with a nice travel cover, which over the years they've sent us samples and we always like them. Just $8. And they'll give you a free gift with all that. Just go to harrys.com/Gleeman. That's HARRYS.com/Gleeman. Normally that trial set's $10, but right now you can get it for just $8 and they'll toss in the free gift. That's our exclusive link, harrys.com/Gleeman for the $8 trial set and the free gift. And let's look forward to many more years of selling people razors through this show.
Yeah, and then also the last sponsor is IDEOU, which is a university essentially that sells classes. And right now what they're promoting is their AI class, their artificial intelligence. So basically what they do is that they have a whole bunch of classes that are around design, whether that is designing a company or designing, artistic things or plans, that sort of thing. And what they've got right now is artificial intelligence has become a really valuable way to sort of iteratively go through designs and help you figure out how to do it. And I think a lot of people are overwhelmed by all the AI hype, and it's important, but you're struggling with how to use it in your day-to-day work. Well, they've got a class for that. I actually sat in on a couple of those classes, checked them out. They were fantastic. You can do it however you want to do it. You can either kind of do it on your own, or you can do it with like a class full of people that you're interacting with and doing these challenges together. And so I would encourage you to go check out IDEOU's courses, because they're designed to seamlessly transition from theory to practice, ensuring that you can apply new skills right away, spark immediate progress, and especially in the artificial intelligence area, which I think is intimidating a lot of people. So let me tell you what you do. Your class starts soon, so you enroll today for a limited time. IDEOU is offering our listeners 15% off site-wide. So go to IDEOU.com/Gleeman. That's IDEOU.com/Gleeman for 15% off. IDEOU.com/Gleeman.
I don't know if you noticed this while you were doing the ad read, but actually look behind you right now.
Oh my. All right.
There was a guy out there on the roof, or on the side of the building, I should say.
Should I put the thing
No,
down?
I like it as an extra little.
Okay, yeah. We're up 27 floors up, and these guys are working on sealing my windows. So
if this is not reason enough to go check out the YouTube channel, you can see it. There he is right there. There's a guy working behind John on the 27th floor. He's on a scaffold.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I don't know that this guy's going to want to be on my YouTube thing. I'm going to try and at least hide his face a little bit.
I think it's all right, John. I don't know that he's like secretly working for a construction company or a window washer or whatever that is. It really is that could be like almost like a painting that shows the different type of jobs available to people in the world.
Right. Yes.
One guy sits and talks into a microphone, and then the other guy's on a scaffold outside. Yeah,
that is funny.
This interesting little contradiction. Okay, so
let me give you a play off a story of mine that's similar, since you're in the infield already, which is one of the questions that we had coming into this season and leaving last season, and we still got going into next season now, is what the hell they're going to do at second base. And I think you're going to have Keaschall on your list at some point here. I think you've already kind of talked a little bit about him, but to me, having Julian on this roster, having Keaschall on this roster, and to a lesser extent, having Cody Clemens on this roster, right, is, I think we are seeing tryouts for what they are, similar to how they don't want to try and solve the problem at shortstop over the offseason because it's too expensive. They're not going to want to try and solve their second base problem. They've got too many other options there. And so I'm already very interested in watching Keaschall. I'm also interested to see how they are getting playing time to both Keaschall and to Julian, and what Julian can do, because we saw Julian really struggle last season. We saw him really struggle early this season. We saw him struggle even at the beginning of the season in St. Paul, but then he's been pretty good in St. Paul up to the end into this call-up. And we know his limitations. We know his limitations defensively. We know his limitations on in terms of striking out, looking, that sort of thing. It'll be interesting to see what he can show, and whether or not he can sort of lay any sort of claim to a role next year, or whether or not Keaschall can maintain enough success over August and September to just say, no, you've missed your chance. I'm going to take second base for the beginning of next year.
I wouldn't tie your happiness to Julian getting much of a chance here down the stretch. I think that would be a mistake by John Bonus. I would hate to see you sad in that regard, John. Yeah, I can tell you they're not going to have Eddie Julian be their opening day second baseman next year. So could he hit enough to get a part-time role, bench role, or something like that? Maybe. I think obviously Keaschall hurts him, because I think Keaschall's probably the most likely opening day second baseman next year. But I actually think Clemens might hurt him even more.
Right.
In that Clemens they're very dissimilar in terms of stylistically at the plate. Clemens is a swing at everything power guy, and Julian is a swing at nothing guy. Right. But they're both left-handed hitters, and unfortunately for Julian, Clemens is certainly no worse at second base defensively. Can also play first base, can also play left field, right field. Could probably play third base in a pinch, and has just hit better than him, obviously. Yeah. So I actually would be Julian is certainly has not fallen out of favor to the extent that Miranda is, if only as evidenced by the fact that Miranda is still at St. Paul. Right.
Right. Yeah. Right.
But I don't think Julian, like if you're going to compare him to another AAA guy who was called up in Austin Martin, I think Martin will be given more of an opportunity, even once Buxton is back, to sort of carve out a bench role for next year. I don't think I believe they still think Julian can hit at a major league level. And like you said, he was good at AAA over the last couple of months. I just don't think they view him as having really any defensive versatility whatsoever. Like I don't think they want to play him at second. They really never have, obviously. But also, like, they really have not given him that much action at first base.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen it sparingly with the Twins and a little less sparingly with AAA, but it's not like they tried to convert him to first base. He can play the outfield. He can't play third base. Like, I just think if there's one roster, like if Keaschall's the starting second baseman next year and there's one roster spot for a left-handed second base, first base guy, it's going to be Clemens more so than Julian. And I'm not even sitting here saying that I think Cody Clemens is going to be part of this team 3 years from now. Like that he's
right.
I think there's a chance he turns back into a pumpkin. But I mean, we're like 3 years removed from Julian doing much of anything for anyone, and I do think they've kind of soured on him. So I do, to your point, second base. I mean, Lee could end up at second base if he doesn't look good at shortstop.
Right.
But I do think that the path is very much clear for Luke Keaschall to show that he can stay healthy, that he can hit, and that he can handle playing second base on a semi-regular basis, interspersed with some DH action. Because if not, they don't love how he looks at second base. And the scouting report on him is tricky at second base because he hasn't played second base hardly at all in the past 2 years because he's had elbow surgery and then a broken.
He hasn't played anywhere other than DH for
right.
much
He's played a little second, but the scouting report coming out of college in the first year of the pros was that he's a good, solid second baseman. Like, he didn't have great arm strength, which makes me worry that might be even more diminished now. But, you can see he's a good athlete. He's got speed. He's got range. I don't think he's the smoothest over there, but if he looks decent at second base over the next 7 or 8 weeks, I think you can basically pencil him in there, which is an interesting trio. If Lee looks okay at shortstop, then you got Lewis at third, you got Lee at short, you got Keaschall at second, then you just need to find somebody to play first base, and you got your infield there. But yeah, I think there's definitely an opportunity for Keaschall, and who's, by the way, only 22, and he's got like 20-something career games at AAA.
Right.
This is a guy who, I don't want to say he's been rushed to the majors, but he's definitely been pushed aggressively given the injury situation especially. But they believe in him, and I believe in him offensively. I believe he can be a solid contributor defensively, but I think there's still more to learn about where that's going to be. Is that going to be second base, center field, left field, more of a utility, more of a first base DH type if he's got any more arm problems, that sort of thing?
And I'm not sure that we'll necessarily know the answer to that this year, in part because I don't know how much they're going to trust his arm. Like so many of those other positions that you're talking about require an arm strength, and I think they're going to be careful with that. So,
yeah, I mean, he hasn't played the outfield in a year, basically,
right,
or more than that even.
Right.
So yeah, one of my other storylines was the injury comebacks. Obviously, Keaschall's one of them. Buxton, like we talked about, should be back this weekend, or at least that's my expectation. Those are both big. Getting those guys performing well, but even more than that, get them across the finish line healthy. Get them to the offseason so that they can have a normal offseason so that you can plan around them in 2026 so that you don't have to worry about their rehab or their surgery and all this stuff. I think that's been huge for Buxton coming out of last year healthy for the first time in forever. I think there's an opportunity. Obviously, you got to get him through the next 7 weeks, and that has been a challenge for Byron Buxton in pretty much any 7-week span his entire career. But those are both big. And then you mentioned at the beginning, Pablo Lopez coming back at some point. I would say I'm actually hoping to talk to him tonight, so I'll maybe have a better update Monday on him. But because they don't go on the road trip, the rehabbing guys, so we'll get an update on him where he's at. I think the hope in my mind is later this month or certainly early September, you can hopefully get him at least a handful of starts down the stretch to at least just prove that he's healthy, whether that's for the 2026 rotation or it's for trade possibilities during the offseason. And then I would put David Fest in that category too. I'm hoping to get an update on him tonight, who's sidelined with shoulder inflammation. And now all of a sudden they've added Taj Bradley and Mick Abel. in terms of young starters while he's been on the IL. So some of those guys are going to end up in the bullpen. You know, the Zebbies and Abel and Bradley and Simeon Woods Richardson and Festa, and then you even toss in, you know, guys like Prelip or Raya or all that. They have a lot of young arms, and that could either mean trading a Joe Ryan or a Pablo Lopez or a Bailey Ober, or it could mean that and moving a couple of those guys to the bullpen. So I think it would be huge for Festa to even make a handful of starts down the stretch this year and at least end the season on a, if not high note, at least a healthy note. So that's on the injury front. And I know Bailey Ober isn't technically injured, but he might be the biggest health question mark of all at this point. Just, you know, they've sort of downplayed the nature of this hip injury that he's had since spring training, but the numbers and the ineffectiveness speak for itself. And I just wonder with him, is it a situation where we're going to find out a week after the season ends that he's going for a cleanup or arthroscopic whatever, which makes him a huge question mark in my mind for next season. So that's the kind of injury picture, and a lot of that. And then obviously over the course of 7 weeks, there's going to be new injuries too. I'm not naive enough not to think that, but so those are big storylines. The bullpen in and of itself is a big storyline. We hit on this at the beginning, just the notion of
maybe the biggest story for the 2026 season, and certainly the question is how much of it's going to be answered in the August and September period here, because right now they certainly don't appear to really be trying to answer anything. They're investing a lot of innings and pitchers that I don't think are necessarily going to play much of a role in 2026.
Yeah, I mean that's why earlier when I was talking about Abel or Bradley, etc., it's like, yeah, I would like to see them start, but more than that, I just need to see them get innings in the majors. And going back to what I just said with Festa, like some of these starters are going to be relievers. I don't know that that's going to be the next 7 weeks or even next season, but whenever the next good Twins bullpen arrives, and I have huge doubts about that being next season, it's going to involve some ex-starters. I mean, look at this bullpen. Duran moved to the bullpen when he got injured at AAA as a top starter prospect. Griffin Jacks moved to the bullpen at age 26 after getting absolutely demolished as a starting pitcher for the Twins. Louis Varland moved to the bullpen this spring after 3 or 4 bad years as a starter on and off with the Twins and at AAA. Brock Stewart moved to the bullpen after spending the first decade of his career as a starter and having all sorts of injury problems. Danny Coulombe was a former starter. Like, that's how you build bullpens. And so there's some scrap heap element to it. Like, hey, can we turn, I don't even know, Brooks Krischke or Thomas Hatch or today's waiver claim du jour into a decent 6th inning reliever? Sure.
And the same way that Danny Coulombe ended up becoming like
but
that.
But the bigger impact is which of these starters are going to become good relievers. And it's tough to predict that. I mean, one way to try to predict that is to look at who has good stuff already as a starter and who you think from either a velocity improvement standpoint or a dialing back of a deeper bag of pitches. Like, in other words, if there's a starter who throws 4 pitches, but really only 1 of 2 of them are consistently effective, and they get in trouble because they got a good fastball and they got a good slider, but when they try to throw a changeup or they try to throw curveballs or they try to mix pitches on and off, they just don't have good secondary pitches. Well,
yeah, it's more of an art than a science. There's a lot of trial and error involved in this, right?
And the easiest thing is you just move a guy to the bullpen and you say, stop throwing your 3rd, 4th, and 5th pitch. Just throw your 1st and 2nd pitch. And sometimes it's as easy as that. And then there's also guys who you throw 93 as a starter, you go to the bullpen and you throw 96. Or in Louis Varland's case, you go throw 95 as a starter and you throw 99 as a reliever. I mean, that can be the equation too. And so it's hard sometimes to pinpoint those guys. Like, I mean, I certainly think if you were to unleash, Taj Bradley or Mick Abel 1 inning at a time,
right,
they're going to be throwing upper 90s consistently with a good breaking ball. But also, if you think they can still be good starters, and in Abel's case, he's only had a handful of starts in the majors to prove it one way or the other, you don't want to kind of give up on that too soon, but also you don't want to waste time if you need a good bullpen next year.
I mean, I wonder with those guys whether or not the Twins are viewing them as, okay, this is going to be 7 and 8 in our rotation for 2026, Or are they actually thinking, well, one of these guys we thinking we're going to be moving to the bullpen? And then also, like, what happens to the 6, 7, 8 from last year, which is, or 8, 9, 10 from last year, which is, Andrew Morris, Cody Lewis, or Marco Raya. Maybe those guys are guys that are thinking that they're going to be slating for the bullpen right now. So,
yeah. I mean, Raya and Lewis have been horrendous at AAA. I think they might be example of you just moved to the bullpen because you've been bad as a starter.
Right. That's exactly.
Which is another. That's kind of the Jack's plan, I guess, that I described. So that's something to watch out for. But then, until that happens, I mean, right now, there's almost no one in this bullpen that has any upside whatsoever, other than maybe Cole Sands.
Well, one of my storylines was going to be. I am interested to see how Ole and Adams do, just because of the development.
Right. Let me alter what I said. I agree on both of those, but you're not going to see that if they continue to ask them to pitch 3 or 4 innings at a time, because that role is not going to allow you to, go max velocity. That role is not going to allow you to dial back your pitch mix. In Ole's case, for instance, he very clearly has a good changeup, and he very clearly has a questionable everything else. If you're asking him to pitch 4 innings at a time, that's basically a starter workload and usage. So he's going to have to use his whole pitch mix. Same thing with Adams. I mean, we saw Adams had a very good start against the Tigers, very promising start, best start of his career by far against the Tigers. When I say lack of upside, what I mean is if they continue to try to get bulk innings out of those guys, and they need bulk innings out of somebody. I mean, somebody's got to pitch these innings, basically. So I see that, but I would like to see, to your point, Ole and Adams 1 inning at a time, or once through the lineup maybe, to see if there is more velocity there, if you can trim back the pitch mix from 4 or 5 to 1 or 2, and something can click. And I don't think either of them are going to be all-star relievers, but if one or both of them could be a 6th inning guy next year, that would be absolutely massive for them. So when I say upside, until I see the Twins commit to changing their usage from long reliever starter-esque to actual reliever, then I just think they don't have a ton of upside. But maybe that Twins will figure that out and take a look at them. I would like to see Ole, especially, if he could just be a fastball changeup guy, because I think the changeup is a legitimate major league pitch, but I think the other stuff holds him back from that mattering that much in a longer bulk role.
Yeah, and part of my interest there is whether or not developmentally they'll stick with it. Sorry about that.
This is hilarious. Well, I'll just talk. This is my dream, actually, to have John. I mean, this is incredible. There are 27 floors in John's building, and I don't know how many total units, but hundreds of units in John's building. And this dude is drilling outside of this specific unit with about 20 minutes left of a podcast that is being recorded, which, just in terms of God laughing at us, has got to be right up there with, our hairlines and faces as just God saying, you know what, I'll give you this. And now John can't even figure out how to unmute himself and talk, because there you go. You got a window. Talk, John. Go.
Okay, because they're drilling so much. I'm actually going to keep it on here until they drill one more time, because it could not be louder when they drill.
You need to be like the Micro Machines man and just get all your thoughts out in 10 seconds.
There we go. Can you hear that? Can you hear that, Aaron?
I can hear that. People
okay,
can definitely hear that. Yes. Otherwise, I would power through it. But yeah, this is all right. Well, I'll just talk about the bullpen for a while. This is funny. Okay, so with the rest of the bullpen, I'll maybe wait to see if John wants to comment more on Adams and Ole later on. But I mean, you look at the rest of the pen, other than those two who are currently pitching multiple innings, and Sands, who has sort of been, I don't know, they talked about him as the closer, but they haven't really used him in that way, in part because who cares? This team doesn't need a closer. It just wants to use him late in games when they have leads, whenever he's available to pitch, which we've seen. You've seen them try to go with, I don't know, Michael Tonkin as a closer. You've seen Erasmo Ramirez as a closer. You've seen Thomas Hatch have a good moment or two. You saw Brooks Krischke get claimed off waivers and get thrown in right there. Like, there aren't a lot of guys here who have upside, or I could even see kind of working themselves into next season.
I'm hoping this is more of a story that we are following in September than it is August, because right now it's clear they're just scrambling to fill innings. right?
Yes.
And I was going to say and also on the starting rotation, which is why we're seeing Ole and Adams do multi-inning pieces, which is also what they were doing in the minors. But I was kind of the opinion that what they were doing in the minors is being limited to like 60 to 70 pitches and throwing once every 4 days. And that was happening whether the game needed it or not.
Well, right? there is no game needed in the minors. They don't.
Right. Well, that's exactly right. Right. But when you get to the majors, it's harder to do that. And so I kind of assumed this is a developmental process. But once they get to the majors, they're going to go one way or the other. They're either going to be a starter or they're going to be a reliever. And so to your point of whether or not we're going to see them start doing one inning stuff, right now, the Twins are in the point where they've got three of their starters on the IL. And yeah, they need the starters. They need some bulk innings, and they're continuing to kind of go with that strategy with these guys. But I think once we get back, Simeon Woods Richardson from his stomach, whatever, and maybe Festa from his shoulder, and Lopez from, he recovers and so on, and we get to the point where we've got actually a rotation, will we see those guys jump in for, okay, I'm going to do a 1 inning of relief, 2 innings of relief? I would think so, because they can't just be doing this for the rest of their life.
Well, yeah, but you act like these games matter for the Twins either. They don't really. It's the same as AAA, effectively. Like, you could absolutely map out every 4th day for Pearson Ole and Travis Adams, and just when Pablo Lopez leaves the start after 5 innings, they just try to finish the game, basically, at that point. Or you could pair them together if you wanted to. I really like this. This is fun. This is really my dream of co-hosting a show, and people might say I do this already, in that I talk 93% of the... Don't nod along. You're muted, John. Don't try to make commentary through your face and head nodding. You need to shut up, buddy. Welcome to Gleeman and Gleeman, which would be a hell of a show. Maybe I'll bring my mom on to co-host something like that.
Gleeman and the Drills.
Yeah, okay. That he needed to chime in for. John, you just take a walk around the block, buddy. We got this. We're going to land this plane. I'm going to do a 40-minute monologue to end this here. So, yeah, on the bullpen, we don't need to spend that much more time on it. But the other opportunity, Abel, Bradley, Marco Raya, Connor Prelip, guys like that, I personally would like to see that. I also, like you said, would like to see Pearson Ole or Travis Adams in a shorter role. My goal would be, I don't really care that much about this season. I don't want to, make a fool of the bullpen and, intentionally tank games or anything, particularly when you got Joe Ryan starting, Lopez starting, Zebby Matthews, Festa. You're trying to provide them with good bullpen support. However, if losing a game or two this season can facilitate finding out more about guys in 1 inning roles for next season, because right now, and this is going to seem like I'm some huge Cole Sands fan at this point. I'm, neutral on Cole Sands. I just keep mentioning him because he's the one guy, like, kind of sight unseen, I would feel comfortable plugging into the bullpen in terms of salary, team control, performance, role, all that stuff, track record. Okay, now you have 7
even
more
really
spots.
Based on this year, but certainly on what he did last year.
Sure.
Yeah, that's part of it, right?
And
we've seen the upside there, right?
Even this year, he's taken a huge step backward.
Right.
But this year, he's been an okay reliever. Like,
yeah,
I would be
right.
comfortable with him pitching the 6th or 7th inning or something like that. The last couple I have here, and then if you have any extra ones, if they ever shut up behind you, I'll let you talk. But what I didn't tell you guys, I was going to reveal this on the next show, but I've hired these gentlemen. They don't actually work for the construction company that's working on John's building. It's a little bit like an Ocean's 11, where I'm using the fact that there is construction going on at John's building to bring in some outsiders. And I told them, just go up to the 27th floor, wait till we're about an hour 15 into the podcast.
Yeah, I understand the original guy was just hoist a guy up there with an air horn right next to us. I just thought, what would work better is just drilling right into your window. We were
gonna actually, I was gonna hire them. They were just gonna like scream, kind of like heckle you, like they do at Target Field, sell the team. We want a pitcher, not a belly itcher, et cetera, et cetera. But the guy said, "Hey, I have a drill at home. Do you think this would add to the effect?" And I thought, yes, that would be amazing. I'll pay you guys double to ruin my podcast. Okay, last couple things. The draft lottery. So before everyone gets excited about this in terms of tank to get the number 1 pick or whatever, they're not going to catch the White Sox for the number 1 pick. actually the Rockies would probably get the number one pick, except the Rockies and the Nationals are ineligible to participate in the lottery. They can't pick inside the top 10 because they've already participated in the lottery X number of years in a row, which is MLB's way of trying to counteract tanking, which I actually think is good. It's probably not a whole lot of fun as Rockies fans watch them lose 130 games or something and they can't even pick higher than 11th. But it plays to the Twins' favor. But what I will say is, if you're an NBA fan, you're an NFL fan, maybe even NHL fan, the impact of a high pick and also the immediacy of a high pick joining the team and having an impact, it's just nowhere near the same in baseball. Like, number one picks in baseball usually become stars, but there are a lot of them who do not become much of anything relative to the other sports. And even when they do become stars, unless it's a, Bryce Harper, Strasburg, Paul Skeens type of situation, a typical number one pick is going to take 3 years to get to the majors, 4 years to get to the majors. And then even when that happens, it's sort of a coin flip whether they'll become an impact player or not. And so there is not nearly as much incentive to lean into badness and tanking in baseball. With that said, the Twins right now, I think, are slotted into the number 8 spot in the lottery. And like I said, 2 teams ahead of them, the Rockies and the Nationals, cannot pick in the top 10. So that bumps the Twins down, up, however you choose to view it. 2 more spots. They're basically like 5 games out of the second spot. And if you can get, I think the Braves right now are holding the second spot, something like that. If you can get to like the second or third spot, you essentially have like a 15 or 20% chance of getting the number one pick. But even more important than that, if you're like second or third at the beginning of the lottery, you can only be pushed down like 5 spots. So you can kind of put a cap on how far you can drop down the lottery, and you can give yourself like a 15, 20% chance to get the number one pick. And then the only other thing I'll add on this, now that John is unmuted, he has surely incredible amount of things to say to me.
There's no chance that I'm going to be staying unmuted.
No? Okay. The 2026 draft is considered pretty strong. I'm not certain that there's like oh my God, this guy is going to be a Hall of Famer number one, but like the top 5 is considered a very strong group relative to this year or relative to an average class, something like that. So it would be a good year to have a top 5 pick is what I'm saying. John, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm semi-interested in the lottery and where they end up, I guess. I guess I'm more interested in it. As a result of that, you're interested in sort of the record. My story on that I don't think is on your list is just like what we see from the team in August and September and how it reflects on Rocco's status for 2026. Because I don't know, I could hear a case that he's already a dead man walking on this, and they're just going to be playing out the season with him. But that also leaves a question of sort of like how about the rest of the coaching staff, everything else, and so what this team does in August and September. Does that have any effect on Rocco's status and whether or not he's back in 2026? Can there be anything there? And, if they do really well, then that would move them out of it. It's kind of the opposite of the lottery.
Yeah. It's
for you, right?
It's a tough situation to try to save your job if that's what's needed.
Right.
This is a gutted roster full of waiver claims and rookies and,
or do they just take a look at it and say, this is sort of the roster he's been waiting for? We've talked a lot about, Rocco's more of I want to make things happen. I want to run. I want to.
But it's not. They still got 3 guys who can run, and
I agree.
10 guys who can't.
We just said, they kind of swapped some in and they swapped some out.
Yeah.
But do we see them play more like that in that style for August and September? And if so, does that help him in terms of retaining because the fact that he was extended through the 2026 season, so it wasn't a lame duck this year, which was the big news that was broken at the worst possible time, right? That doesn't really play into it, I don't think. Like basically every manager that's ever been fired has already had at least 1 year left on almost a full year left on their contract. I don't think that really plays into it. So
yeah, he can lean into that style of play. They'll lose more games that way. I almost kind of want him to do that because maybe it'll shut people up who are just insistent that they need to be running and bunting and doing all this stuff regardless of the makeup of the actual players on the roster. So maybe he wants to lean into Ryan Jeffers and Larnick and Wallner and Brooks Lee and these guys running and bunting, and it won't be pretty. Maybe that'll kind of make people realize yes, even if you believe in that style of play, you need the pieces in place to actually do that.
Yes.
But yeah, I agree with you that the contract option is meaningless. I mean, we've talked about this, but I don't know what he's making. I could take a guess. It's not a lot it's a lot relative to podcasters. It's not a lot relative to Major League Baseball players.
Right.
Like, he's making less money than like a middle reliever makes or a utility infielder makes. He's not, even now after they shed salary, he's not one of the highest salaries in the organization. I don't think that would keep them from firing people. I certainly don't think it would keep a new owner from firing someone. That's a line item at that point. I mean, think of all the new costs associated with a new owner coming in with a Major League Baseball franchise, and a couple $1 million for Rocco Baldelli is not going to drive your decision making. But maybe look, if he pulls every string and they're running and bunting and Thomas Hatch is throwing shutout ball and they somehow go, I don't know, 500 down the stretch. I mean, it's not a mark against him to do that. Obviously, I don't know. He's in a tricky spot because if you do need to save your job, this ain't the group to save it with. And if it's already sort of decided, like there isn't a job to save, then it doesn't really matter what he does. I mean, he might as well just manage how he wants to manage. I don't know. I guess my last one kind of ties to that a little bit. We mentioned new ownership and all that stuff. I ranked this last on my article that I wrote, but I'll rank it first in terms of actual big picture franchise level importance to the team, which is the Pohlads. You can't watch them. They're kind of scarce these days around Target Field. I used to run into them all the time in the hallway. Either I'm taking different hallways and elevators, or they're not.
Or they're taking different hallways.
Yeah, or they're just not there as much, which is fine too.
Yes.
It's been 10 months now, roughly, since they put the team up for sale publicly. It's been about 5 months since Justin Ishbia, the Illinois billionaire, backed out of negotiations that they thought were nearing the finish line and then immediately pivoted to buying into the Chicago White Sox. And that kind of left them at the altar a little bit. They had to regroup. We've heard at various points over the last 4 or 5 months since Ishbia halted negotiations with them, they're getting close. There's multiple suitors. There's been all kinds of reports by national outlets, by business outlets, by Dan Hayes for The Athletic, by Phil Miller in the Star Trib. Endless stuff. We've each heard various things that we've tried to pass along. The latest on that is there seems to be some indication that they're again feel like they're getting close.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm saying, was once bitten, twice shy, whatever. At this point, I need to see it to believe it. At this point, I'm unwilling to act as if. I need to see it. I need to know who the new owner is going to be. I need to know what the timeline is and all that stuff. Once we hear that, changes the entire game. And so that's why I listed the Pohlads is probably, to me, the most important thing to watch, even though it's not on the field over the last 2 months, because, none of this stuff. I mean, we talk about the bullpen. We talk about Brooks Lee, Royce Lewis, talking about Luke Keaschall. These are big things. Pales in comparison to the impact of new ownership.
Even maybe in the short term, even maybe for 2026. Certainly long term, obviously, it's more important, right? But the question is, could it even impact the 2026 season at this point? I don't know that I would necessarily expect a huge bump in payroll, but there is sort of the potential changes we mentioned. We don't know what Rocco's status is for next year. We don't know what the front office status is for next year. We don't know what the payroll is like for next year. We don't know, what the philosophy is around whether or not whether or not they really believe they're in the middle of a competitive window right now or not for next year. Whether it's trending up or trending down for next year, all of that stuff is influenced by ownership. And so, the potential impact is not just ongoing health of the franchise, where they're going to be playing, all that stuff. It's also, immediate. It could have some immediate effects on what 2026 looks like.
Yeah. And we're talking about speculation, but you can even go back to the All-Star game when Mad Fred commented and basically said it's going to be a done deal. It's just a matter of time. There's all sorts of other reports and stuff like that. I mean, I want to believe that. I desperately want to believe that for the team, for its fans, for us. I just desperately want to believe that there is a finish line here that we can see and feel, that we can be out from under 4 decades and 3 generations of Pohlad ownership. I just think unless that happens, and until that happens, everything else matters only a little bit. Like the on-field, the vibes, everything. Because the moment, if they're sold, it's a clean slate. You're maybe misguidedly, but still hoping for a better billionaire in charge. Right. And maybe that's, an oxymoron, I guess. But I'm ready to open door number 2, sight unseen. It doesn't even matter at this point. I mean, I was ready before, and certainly their actions over the last 2 years and their actions at the trade deadline and just the tone deafness, and they seem to have just given up all pretense of, trying to make people happy. I think they've probably recognized that they're as ready to leave and get their money as Twins fans are ready for them to leave at this point. And until that happens, it's hard to get that invested in specific things, although we talked about plenty that are important. But the moment it does happen, if it does happen, it's incredibly easy then to have a clean slate and to view it through a different lens and have some level of optimism that at least there is change possible. And who knows what the payroll will be? Who knows 10 years from now if we'll look back and say this new billionaire is better than the old billionaires or whatever. But it's gotten so bad for so long at this point under the Pohlads that we know there's never going to be any change with them, any meaningful long-term change with them. We saw it for a 3-year window.
Certainly not short-term. I mean,
yes.
While this sale has been going on, or at least while it has been contemplated, we've seen the philosophy for this team switch 180 degrees from we're going to be growing, we're going to be trying to become a World Series contender, to we're just going to play it simple and save some money. So
yes,
yeah, and hope for the best.
And then we're going to dump half the team, basically. Right. 2 years of stasis followed by a fire sale. I'm sick of it. Anybody who listens to this is sick of it. Obviously, we don't need to rehash that over and over. But to your point earlier, from a timeline perspective, it's mid-August, and obviously, if they announce a sale tomorrow, there's time for new ownership to come in and take over and institute change. And by, let's say, November 1st, which is kind of how I view the offseason starting, things could be in place at that point. But they're not going to be sold tomorrow.
Right.
If they are, by the way, we'll do an emergency episode. Patreon.com/going. I have the title and everything. We need some music for it, but but what I'm saying is, like, if this drags further, even weeks further, you're putting in danger the idea that clean slate and that new approach and maybe that new money will be in place for the start of the offseason. And we initially, when they put the thing on the market last October or November, whenever it was, we were like, well, obviously it's not going to be in place for this offseason, and they effectively did nothing during the offseason again. But we had hopes that, by June, let's say, which at that point would have been 7 or 8 months later, maybe it's in place and they can go out and do something at the trade deadline. Well, that came and went, and instead they shed salary and they did the fire sale at the trade deadline. Now we're once again back at the point where we're like, well, if they kind of hurry up a little bit here, they could be in place by November and start the offseason with that clean slate.
Sure.
I mean, a month from now, that's going to be a much more difficult window to, needle to thread. And so that is something to watch. It also, as sad as it sounds, like, if that's not in place by the start of the offseason and there's some doubt lingering, like if they don't feel very confident that new owner is going to take over, let's say by the first of the year, do they trade Pablo Lopez? Do they trade Joe Ryan? Do they trade Bailey Ober? Do they trade whatever's left of salaried guys, even guys like Trevor Larnach that we talked about earlier, where it's like, well, he makes $5 million. We'd rather not pay that person $5 million. I mean, Pablo Lopez is making $21.5 million next year.
Yeah.
He certainly has trade value. I think if he were healthy, there's a very real chance he would have been traded last week. So that, to me, is the negative aspect of sort of waiting for this to arrive, beyond just the possibility that it doesn't arrive. Even if it arrives too late, have they already done more damage, which is my view of the trade deadline? Have they already kind of made decisions? And if it's a Lopez trade or a Ryan trade or whatever trade to further shed salary, to further hurt this team in the short term, then if a new owner comes in spring training, let's say, well, it's too late for that. It's not like they can just clap their hands and undo those trades. And so that is why these next 2 months on the field are very important for all the reasons we've outlined. But if there is not a deal in place with a new ownership group by, let's say, the last game of the regular season, which is, late September, I think you're running into some difficulties there in terms of planning for the offseason, planning for 2026, because then it's just the same lame duck group. To your point, they don't want to spend. They'd rather not spend. They've kind of given up all pretense of trying to make the fan base happy long ago. And I worry, what is a situation where an already terrible ownership group that everyone hates is last day of school mode? Where they're just like, who cares? I don't care if anybody's mad at me. Everyone's already mad at me. I don't want to spend another nickel. Let's shred this thing down to the studs, basically.
Yeah, I'm not going to go Chicken Little on it if they don't end up selling here in the last 2 months. I don't believe they are in a situation, taking a look at sort of their baseline payroll at $95 million, that they're going to go, you know what, we need to cut the payroll by another $30 or $40 million beyond the level that we did before, and therefore that we got to shed another $20 million on Pablo Lopez. Now, it's not inconceivable. I could be wrong. Maybe some stuff I don't in terms of their philosophies or their future decisions.
Here's what I know. Here's what I know, John, and you should know it even better than me. I know the Pohlads. And I know that they don't always act rationally, and I know that when push comes to shove, they don't want to pay money for anything, and they don't really give a crap about anything other than the money and the prestige of owning the team. And my fear is the point at which the fan base has turned against them to previously unseen levels. And believe me, that is saying something about the Pohlads over the last 40 years. My worry is they are just in who gives a crap mode. Yeah. And they'd rather not pay someone $20 million just flat out. I mean, when you say, the payroll is at a level where they shouldn't feel compelled to slash it, that was already the case. The payroll going into next year was 125, 130 million. It wasn't like they were at some big situation where they had to dump salary. They chose to do that because they'd rather not pay it. And I've gotten to the point now with them where I feel like that 3-year window where they actually spent at an average level has fooled so many people, me included and you included, into thinking, however briefly, maybe this new generation of Pohlads is a little bit different. And in fact, they are not different at all. And in many ways, they are worse because look what the state of the team is since then. It was like give a hungry person one plate of food and you go, ooh, they're going to start providing food and then never feed them again. Was that one plate of food better or was it worse? Because now that was possible. And so do they need to shed salary? No. They don't need to shed. They didn't need to shed salary in the first place. They've been running a $130 million salary payroll for the last 2 years. They don't need to shed anything. But I don't think needing or what's best for the team or what's best for the franchise, that ship has sailed that is on whatever their fifth best yacht and is sailing away for the Pohlads. And so I don't have any inside information other than I just know they like to not pay people stuff.
All right. I don't anticipate that. Well, first of all, I do anticipate there being a sale, so that's part of my optimism on it. And second of all, I do think, in part, the trading away Correa and freeing up $20 million ended up taking some pressure off of them. I'm probably also not having to worry about paying Joan Duran $8 million next year, or Griffin Jacks $4 million next year. To your point on shedding some of the future payroll based on this, I do think taking a look ahead. I'm not saying that the Pohlads are taking a look at that. I'm saying Falvey was taking a look at the budget he was likely to have and what he would have to spend, and found some ways to free up some money such that, unless a new budget comes down from the Pohlads, which is significantly lower than the $130 million that they've been spending the last 2 years, I don't necessarily see that happening. Now, maybe that will happen. Maybe your point is right, that they're like, let's just rip this. We're already on our way out the door. Let's light the whole thing on fire while we're at it. But
they're claiming to, at least prior to the trade deadline, be on track to lose $40 million this year with a $135 million payroll. do the math. Go look up some TV contracts and ticket sales and tell me how that's possible. And then when people go, how have they put $400 million in debt on the books? Well, they're claiming to lose $40 million in a season where they're only paying $135 million in payroll. I just have learned throughout decades, but certainly now,
right.
There is no
relearned what you hadn't learned before was brought home again. Right.
There is no, in my mind, there is no bottom to the pit with the Pohlads. There is no, let's drop this and see how far down it goes. And you're absolutely right from a logical perspective. They don't need to slash more payroll. They've already done that. There's no need for it on the field, off the field, whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean, like, it could be as simple as this sale keeps dragging on. Do we want to pay Pablo Lopez $21 million next year, or do we not? And I can tell you they do not. I mean, what do we need? 4 more decades to know? Like, if they can save $1, they will save $1. And I just worry that they've gotten to a point where the public reaction cannot get worse. Well, and on one hand, we're hoping that spurs them to actually sell the damn thing, which I think it will. But on the other hand, there's an alternate side to that coin, which is if you can't get a worse reaction, then you can just behave how you actually want to behave. And I would hate to see what that looks like. I mean, what that looks like is probably, the Pittsburgh Pirates payroll or something like that. But I hope you're right and I'm wrong. And more than that, I just hope that there's a sale here in the next couple of months, which I'd like to say I'm optimistic, but I mean, we've had this exact back and forth. Yeah. 3 times in the last 6 months, right?
And we will probably continue to do so at patreon.com/Cleveland. If you want to check that out, we want to thank our sponsors for keeping this particular episode free. Those sponsors include IDEOU. They've got the special deal on artificial intelligence stuff. Harry's Razors, who we're glad to hear are going to be continuing on to stick with us, but our special thank you goes out to our presenting sponsor, Black Stack Brewing. They're now being distributed to all of greater Minnesota, so stop by your favorite liquor store or the Black Stack Tap Room to grab your favorite brew or try something new.
Yeah, and go sign up for the Patreon. If 100 million of you go sign up for the Patreon, we can just buy the Twins. That's all it'll take, just like a cool 100 million of you.
But okay, yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, even 25 million of you. We'll stretch a little bit. I got a little in savings.
We might need to start, covering like Indian cricket, or I don't know, a really popular sport in China or something.
Well, what I was going to say, well, that's a good plan. What I was going to say, we'll buy it, and then we won't have any money, so we'll have to trade Pablo because we literally won't have any money to do anything. We'll be like, okay, but all right, go check out Patreon.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Or we'll be back next week.
And we'll see if this can be. Check out the Cleveland and the Geek YouTube channel so you can see people working outside the 27th floor by window.
It's worth it.
And for all the drilling and stuff that you heard, you can see the guy with the drill.
We should make like a super cut of just that guy behind you, like a day in the life of a construction worker on the 27th floor. Like maybe that's like an alternative channel. Like we don't even mention it's part of this podcast. We're just like, have you ever wondered what it's like to be on a scaffold 27 floors up? Here it is.
Literally a football field up in the air. No, go ahead.
Maybe that'll get us the revenue we need to buy the team. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye. And welcome to the end of this video. There's lots more. For another, just click on one of these boxes.
Or click on this circle in the middle to subscribe to all of our Twins Talk.
Thank you. Cleveland